Freedom's greetings, Helldivers. Ervin here. Now, I know I told you that I didn't plan to talk about every single change as it dropped each day, and I intend to keep that promise, at least to some degree, despite feeling compelled to drop a short on the railgun. But I've been given something pretty special to share with you all today, as Piles doesn't seem to be done with his bean spilling just yet, outside of their scheduled patch release. Now, as most of you know, that rocket change to Devastators and gunships has been announced to be one additional reload after 3 volleys of rockets, alongside an 80% reduction to their splash damage. As far as the splash damage is concerned, I'd expect this to have already been implemented, as a further 80% from where we already are would basically mean direct hits only. And as far as the rocket change itself, I still stand by the fact that it seems like overkill. But at the same time, maybe I'll come to appreciate the additional counterplay, at least when it comes to the gunships. There have definitely been times where I've been caught out by a gunship swarm and proceeded to dodge revolution my way around their missiles for minutes at a time with no end in sight because my support weapon was dropped far away and there are no teammates around to assist. Limiting the rockets in this situation, for example, where I'll have dodged a total of 36 rocket barrages? Yeah, I probably deserve to live in that situation. So, in that regard, the change is definitely growing on me, but that's not what I brought you all here to discuss. We have something a bit juicier today, thanks to Vivid Nightmare and the Avengers Initiative realizing there was an exposed page during the presentation, confirming they were indeed actually holding the patch notes for some reason. Through technology and hundreds of nerds squinting at the image, they've compiled a list of changes from the page that we'll be going over now. The Scythe has been a pretty weak option ever since Helldivers 1, so when it returned in a pretty worthless state for Helldivers 2, no one was particularly surprised. However, on the 17th, it looks like it's going to be receiving quite the serious glow up. The recoil is being reduced or removed entirely, while the heat VFX is being made more clear. Its scope is being swapped to the 4 times variable optic found on the Diligence Counter Sniper, Eruptor, and AMR, and it will be both cooling down faster and setting enemies ablaze faster than before, having its burning buildup increased. I have to say, a recoilless laser beam with an ACOG.jpg definitely sounds appealing to me. The Scythe was funny enough already, a pretty passable bot weapon just because of the next to non existent recoil able to pop the heads off Devastators super quickly. So, being able to do that reliably from further ranges should definitely improve its usability. Not to mention, lighting enemies on fire quicker will mean it'll become a more viable bug gun, potentially about to slide its beam over the swarm, setting them all alight within the motion. As burning damage is nearly sufficient to knock out hunters in one application, this might be what the weapon needs to start seeing some real use in the game. Next to crossbow. Oh boy, the crossbow has seen more balance changes than any weapon in the game since its release, as they seem to really want this weapon to get into a high use rate. We've seen its ballistic and explosive damage swapped with an overall ammo increase. Then its explosive damage penetration was improved, and eventually it was made one handed, giving it additional utility and usability with the personal shield, as well as the ability to kite enemies more efficiently against bugs. But still, they are continuing to give it more love, it seems. The crossbow's explosion inner radius is being increased from 2 to 3 meters, and the outer radius increased from 4 to 6 meters for a 50% increase in total, alongside an insane increase for the explosive damage itself from 150 to 300 damage. This change is going to allow the crossbow to eliminate any hunters or smaller within the majority of its area of effect in just one shot, and take down Devastators in just 2 shots to the chest, as the arms take 50% of the explosive damage alongside the main health pool for a total of 600 damage per hit when landing shots on the plate. This is almost enough to kill them outright, but generally it's going to be taking 2 shots on top of the weapon's capability to just kill them with one headshot from behind a personal shield. As someone who already felt this weapon was solid, this buff is pretty bonkers. The Defender SMG is receiving a pretty modest buff compared to the rest of the stuff on this list. It doesn't seem like it'll actually make any impact on the breakpoints for the weapon, going from 70 to 75 damage. So it seems they're making good on their word to not keep them in mind for whatever reason. The durable damage is also being increased from 7 to 8, but yeah, nothing special with this change. Moving on. The Liberator Penetrator is getting 15 more damage, going from 45 to 60, effectively becoming a higher durable damage, higher armor penetration base Liberator, indicating that the base Liberator will likely also receive a buff. Going from 45 to 60 damage is going to improve its performance by 33%, which definitely sounds substantial, but considering this is also the weapon that could previously mag dump the torso of a Devastator and leave it standing, a 33% increase is not likely to make it a standout star, but will likely make it a decent early game weapon considering it's unlocked pretty early, typically in a Helldiver's career, being a mobilized weapon. Now, speaking of mobilized weapons, here's something to get really excited about. The standard Diligence rifle is receiving an immense 33% damage increase, going from 120 to 160 damage, as well as had its durable damage bumped from 32 to 42. This is going to allow this weapon, especially alongside Fall Off, being altered to a rounding up system to one-shot kill Devastators through headshots, making it a real contender against the Jar 5 and counter snipers known for their head-popping prowess. Unfortunately, 160 does fall just short of the Hunter body breakpoint of 175, so the weapon will still be almost entirely worthless as a bug gun. But that all being said, I'm pretty excited to bring this one into some bot drops. Now, what about the counter sniper? Well, it's getting a pretty crazy buff too, going from 140 to 200 damage per bullet with a durable damage increase to 20 from 14, as well as a stagger force bump from 15 to 20. So this gun already had the headshot breakpoint on Devastators, but an increase to 200 damage means its effective range for doing so just got an additional few hundred meters added on, making it more consistent at head popping when at long ranges. 200 damage is also going to improve its non-standard Devastator breakpoints, like aiming for the stomach region under the plate, which will now break in just two, yes, two hits, becoming an extremely viable weak point to exploit. The legs will also break in 5 shots, and the backpack on heavy Devastators will be taken out in just 6 hits. Before we move on, remember how I mentioned the Hunters? Yes, the counter sniper at 200 damage will actually be able to one-shot kill Hunters to the body, assuming your shots don't get stuck on the limbs. The DCS will also now one-shot headshot warriors and break Alpha Commander heads in just 4 hits. The stagger increase is unfortunately not super significant, only able to heavy stagger small enemies while flinching medium ones like devs. Something that is basically just annoying and not at all helpful because they're still going to laser beam you while flailing their arms around anyway. This still incredibly anemic 10% durable damage at only 20 still leave the weapon pretty weak against high durable parts such as gunships and factory strider chinling guns, but hey, you can't have it all, I suppose, and I already felt this weapon was a top runner, so we'll take what we can get. Ah, yes, the Eruptor. Yep, it's got its shrapnel back, but this time they aren't just using the airburst strike as a baseline, they're actually creating a new shrapnel effect specifically for the Eruptor itself, with a large nerf to the AoE explosion on the weapon down to 225 from 340. It's important to remember, however, that the shrapnel on the Eruptor was never listed in its damage values, only ever the explosion in ballistics. This means they are doing this to compensate the fact that after a bunch of buffs to its explosive damage, adding even more damage back with the shrapnel isn't gonna make it completely busted all over again. Overall, a good change and a solid way to appease the community's desire for the shrapnel to return here. Personally, I felt the Eruptor landed on an okay spot, and I didn't really miss the thousands of damage the shrapnel did previously, but we'll see what this new version can do on the 17th. Now, lastly, at the bottom of the page, the Blitzer, and likely by association, the Ark Thrower, will be receiving the Stun Build-Up effect as a buff, able to incapacitate enemies like the Pummeler can, leaving them completely motionless and defenseless once that stun threshold is reached. This is just incredible. The Blitzer was already the best bug gun in the game, so adding a further crowd controlling aspect to the weapon beyond its already heavy stagger is just going to be mind-blowingly powerful and, quite frankly, overkill. The Arc Thrower, I hope, has a more significant build-up than the Blitzer, as I feel it definitely deserves a buff, but the Blitzer was completely fine to chill exactly how it was. Considering it's also my favorite bug gun, though, I will definitely be dropping in to give this a try immediately on my first bug dive. So yeah, in summary, some pretty insane buffs for a whole host of weapons, and keep in mind this was just decoded from one page in the notes, meaning there are many, many more buffs and changes coming on the 17th. Also worth noting that this was decoded from a blurry page, so take everything here with a grain of salt as it might not be entirely accurate, and they could always change something up on us as well. Not to mention the chance Piles could have just been holding some fake notes for the recording and wanted to mess with us. Although, given his track record of bean spilling and Arrowhead's track record of leaving their whole ass hanging out of their pants when it comes to leaking their game, I feel like we were meant to find these, so thanks, Piles. Overall, my personal thoughts on these buffs are it looks overkill for some weapons, while others like the Diligence, Liberator, Penetrator, and Defender definitely needed a bump. I think leaving the Blitzer and Crossbow alone would have been just fine. But again, we'll have to see on the 17th when the patch officially releases, where I'll be likely covering all of this and more. Thanks for watching till the end, and have yourselves a wonderful day. I'll see you next time.
Oh, damn it. I'm feeling a little bit of fear. There's some debailing.
You look like
Oh,
you
damn
are
it.
feeling a bit of
soldier
fear.
for the cause.
You and your stupid face.
Ah!